So today I'm in the Lobster Hatchery of Wales. You can see the sign here with some details about how the hatchery works. The Lobster Hatchery of Wales is for common lobsters. And these are the lobsters that are found most commonly, as you'd expect from the name, all around Wales, all around most of the UK and across the Atlantic. The Lobster Hatchery of Wales is all in this room, and it extends a little bit beyond here as well with some of our stock, but it's quite an important historical part of what we do at the Anglesey Zoo. So in 1989, during the 80s, the stocks of common lobsters, particularly for the restaurant industry, basically for food and for eating, had been completely overfished, and there was a big crash during the 80s in the population of common lobsters. It was no longer a sustainable fishery for all the local fishermen here around North Wales. And all across the UK, they implemented guidelines on changing the fishing regulations. And they also set up several hatcheries to try and raise lobsters, small juvenile lobsters, to re-release them into the sea to help keep those sustainable stocks up of the common lobsters. And the one here at Anglesey Zoo is still running. It used to take up 2 large rooms inside the building. It now just has a small facility in here. We managed to do an awful lot in this very small space. We see all kinds of stuff going on in here. And the reason we've kept it really is more for conservation and educational values. So fortunately, when all the regulations were changed for common lobster fisheries in the late 80s, they managed to maintain the sustainability of the population. So basically, they came up with rules. They were actually landing on lobster boats that came in from fishing. They would check the size of the lobsters with a really simple stick. So the idea was that the fishermen pull a lobster out of the pot. Before they actually land it on the boat, they measure it, and if it's not long enough for the stick, it has to go back in the water. Very simple principle. Basically, if it isn't big enough to bred sufficiently to reproduce, to produce more lobsters, then it's not sustainably caught, so it has to go back in. Alongside this, buried hens, females and eggs. So this is a picture of what they look like. Very easy to distinguish a buried hen, which is a female lobster carrying eggs, because you can see all the eggs on the underside here, and it means that the tail is kept curled up as well to protect those eggs, to keep them ventilated, with all these really small appendages that you can see here. If one of those is landed, it's still illegal to land a female with eggs, a buried hen. And the reason for that is that you're preventing reproduction. Leave her just a few weeks, let the eggs get released into larvae, then you can catch that female lobster. And all these really simple things just being stuck to meant that the fisheries started to recover, and they are still sustainable today. So lobsters caught sustainably all around the UK. Obviously, not the cheapest thing to eat, quite a luxurious dish, but it means that you're eating healthily because you're eating seafood, which is local and which has been sustainably caught. So as part of the project, obviously we were working with local fishermen. We still have a lot of links with local fishermen with the project that we're doing, and that's ongoing today. So the fishermen bring us a buried hen. Now they have licences which permit them to land the buried hens of females with eggs, which most other lobster fishermen can't do. And they bring them to us. So once we've got 2 or 3 and our hatchery is full, till they release their eggs, then we don't accept any more. Once the females have finished releasing their eggs, they get taken back to the fishermen. They get notched, which is when there's a little clip taken out of the edge of their tail, and they get re-released. So the fisherman will then know if he recaptures that female that she's been re-released and she has released her eggs. Very simple process. Great part of collaboration with the local community and obviously the local fisheries. We work very closely here anyway at Anglesey Zoo with the fishermen on sustainability issues and local environmental issues as well. So when a female gets brought in, they get put in these sort of large keep tanks. We can hold 2 or 3 females in each tank. In preference, we have 1 in each. At the moment, we've got 1 in each. You can see what we have to do if there's more than 1 female, we band their claws. This female only has 1 banded claw now, because when there was another female with her, the bands were put on, and now that female's been released, we've been able to let the bands go, so she's only got 1 banded claw. The reason for the banded claws is that common lobsters are very cannibalistic. They're even cannibalistic in the larval stage when they're floating around as kind of zooplankton in the water. As adults, they're incredibly territorial, they're incredibly cannibalistic, so they will actually rip each other's sort of legs off and claws off and fight pretty much to the death to defend their territory, females, males. So obviously when you have 2 animals together, if you don't band their claws, then they do not do well at all. And we want to make sure they're in really good condition while they're here, while they release those larvae, before we re-release them. So that's what the banded claws are about. And see one of our females here. This is the normal colour of a normal lobster. Now it's amazing how many people think lobsters are orange or pink because they've seen them cooked and they've eaten them when they're cooked. They completely change colour when they're cooked. But this lobster as well, you can see, they have like tiny little bits of sponge and algae growing on them as well. So really very beautiful. You can see here this kind of territorial behaviour, very, very defensive. And that one banded claw. Again, the other really interesting thing about lobsters is the difference in their claws. So if you look here, you can see they have a slicing claw and they have a crushing claw. So the longer, thinner claw is the slicing claw, so they can slice their food up. And the crushing claw is this bigger, chunkier one here. On this lobster is on the left. And this is how they basically, once they've caught their food, they break it up, they slice it up, and they're able to feed on it. Also, of course, very, very useful for defence. So if you do get a lobster's claw around your finger, it could actually take your finger off. They're very, very strong indeed, especially those really chunky claws there, the crushing claws. So this female, she has actually just finished releasing her larvae, so she's ready now to be re-released into the wild. When the tail is tucked under, they have these eggs on their underside. They're constantly moving their appendages around to keep the oxygenation of those eggs. And when they release, they gradually release the larvae over quite often several days. And what happens in these tanks, the larvae generally come closer to the surface because this is where the lights are above, and we basically collect them out of here and we put them in our upwelling bins. These upwelling bins at the moment, we've just moved a load of larvae onto this, which you'll see in a minute, but you can see these are fairly simple. So you have the water supply going in, basic filtration, and we have this means of keeping the water moving. So basically they're constantly moving, and that's to reproduce the situation that you get in the wild. So in the wild, when those larvae are released, they join the zooplankton. They get carried out with all the other zooplankton, and they're cannibalistic, as I said. So they will eat each other if they bump into other lobster larvae. They will eat all kinds of other zooplankton that they find, and they go through 3 stages of molting as larvae, where they sort of change. So even in the first stage of larvae, they do look quite a lot like lobsters, but by the time they get to the 3rd stage, you can actually see the tiny claws and everything on them, and they're still only just a few millimetres long. So it's really quite amazing to watch those different processes and those different stages here. So they get in these upwelling bins, they get carried for about 6 weeks, and when they get to 6 weeks, they do their 4th molt. Now, lobsters as crustaceans, like crabs and prawns and other crustaceans, when they grow, they molt. So basically, they shed their entire outer body when they grow. This makes them really vulnerable. So every time they molt, it's when they get to a new growth stage in their cycle, their development cycle. Stage 4, they stop being carried around and they actually start to settle. As soon as we get to stage 4 settling, it happens of course around the same kind of time, over 2 or 3 days. We stop the upwelling in the bins, we remove them, and we move them over to this part of the hatchery of really tiny baby lobsters. And what we have to do, of course, because they're cannibalistic, we have to keep them in these separate little pots, because if they get close to each other, they will actually eat each other, they will fight, they will lose claws. Now, amazingly, when lobsters lose limbs, claws, legs, they can regrow them, but they can only regrow them when they next molt, and obviously it takes a lot of energy. So we want to try and reduce that if we can. When they're small like this, they're molting as they grow very often, every week or 2, or sometimes even more often when they're tiny. Adult lobsters, it's really only every few years that they molt, so it's even more important for them really that they don't lose their limbs, because obviously they're then short of a claw or a leg or something that they really need for their proper development and health. So these teeny babies here, we're bound to see somewhere a molt, because they're almost constantly molting. You can see how absolutely tiny these little guys are. Let's see if we can get one to move around for us. There we go. So you can see these teeny baby lobsters, and they're just starting their first molts. So these are beyond stage 4. They're about 2 months old, and they're just starting now to look and behave like proper little lobsters. You can see how fast they can swim there, and they're all in these separate pots. And you can also see their colour. So they're very blue. When you get these small lobsters at the juvenile stages, even up to a few years old, they're usually very blue, and this is a natural thing. So people are often surprised at how blue lobsters are, particularly the adults and often the juveniles, but this is their normal colour. So when you see them out, when you see them in the sea, when you catch them in pots, then this is the colour that they are, this really bright blue colour. You can see here there's one that's only got one claw, but as I say, it will regrow that when it next molts, so probably just in a week or two. And in here we've got our temia, or little brine shrimp, which is their food. And what we will do with these, we keep these until they're somewhere around 6 to 12 months old. Now it depends how many we've had in one lot of larvae, and how many other ones we've got at different ages and stages as to when we release them. We generally try to keep them until they're about 6 months old before we release them. And this is because it hugely increases the survivability in the wild. So if you think about your larvae, you get 3, 4, even 500 larvae from one lobster. By the time you get to stage 4, you're often down to just 100 or so of the juveniles. That's because obviously some of them don't survive, they don't get enough food for whatever reason, and the survivability in the wild will be even lower. So that's the idea of hatcheries like this. We have this maximum survivability, maximum conditions for growth, and we feed them really well like this until they're about 6 months old or 12 months old. We like to keep a few of different ages and sizes as well, just as examples and for the educational value. So with these little lobsters now, we're going to keep them for another 3 or 4 months, and then we'll start releasing them. And before we release them, we put a gravelly bottom on here, and we put lots of little tubes for them so that they can get used to being in a sort of more normal outdoor environment, hopefully not fighting each other too much if they're fairly spread out. And then obviously that's acclimatise them a little bit for when we release them, because otherwise you can imagine they'd be really, really well looked after, really well cared for, really well fed in these tiny boxes, and they suddenly get thrown into the wild, and their chances then are probably a little bit lower for really good survivability. So these are all our newest little babies. We don't have any larvae at the moment, but we do have a female who is going to release larvae. So we usually have lots and lots of different stages. Here we have some 6 to 12 month old lobsters. So most of the siblings of these guys have been released. Again, you can see how blue they are. Look at that, really like almost an ultraviolet blue colour. And this one again has only one claw. This is quite common, probably because he's very feisty by the look of it. Again, when they molt, then that claw will grow back. So we like to make sure, if we can, that they have both claws if we re-release them, just for the optimum survivability of them, really. So we've kept a few of these at this sort of older age group, and we've also got some at an older age group still. We've got some here that are a couple of years old. Now these are very interesting. These are much more bright orange, because these have come from Claudette, who's our bright orange lobster. She was one in about 300,000. No, 30 million. Sorry, 1 in 30 million. So 1 in a million lobsters is a really, really bright blue as an adult, and Claudette was 1 in 30 million. So really, really rare to get this bright orange colour, and you can see her offspring are much, much brighter orange as well, which is really interesting. And this is the kind of thing that we're going on to now with the Lobster Hatchery of Wales. So having run it for all these years, sort of, you know, more than 3 decades, we're looking now at how we can expand on our research side of it. So we're looking at getting lobsters of different colours in. The really, really bright blue lobsters, we've got a female bright blue lobster. We can maybe have a quick look at her in a moment. And what we're hoping for is to find a blue male. We almost got one a couple of years ago on a fish market in Swansea, but sadly, unsurprisingly really, because it had been on ice for a day or two, it didn't make it. Very, very sad, because it would have been fantastic if we'd been able to make the male blue and the female blue lobster. So we're keeping our female blue lobster for now, and hoping there's a 1 in a million chance at some point that we'll get a blue male. And it will be very interesting for us then to see what happens with the coloration, because there's not enough information yet on lobsters to know whether the factors are entirely environmental, or entirely related to genetics, or possibly, we believe, a combination of both, but we don't know how much of a combination of both. So it's only really when we can successfully breed to unusual colours and see what colours the offspring are that we can find out that kind of information. And similarly with Claudette, I mean, unfortunately, with a 1 in 30 million, the chances of finding a bright orange male to mate her with are incredibly low. But it's still been very, very interesting to get the information on her offspring, on how many of them are orange, even with just one orange parent. So that's the kind of research we're continuing. We're always releasing these little baby lobsters. It's great to be able to take kids down to the beach for educational value. We just take them down to the rocky shore and just let them go, usually at a high tide when it's going to be on the way down, and watch them sort of acclimatise and find their own little habitat there. Make sure we spread them out quite well too, and we do this all around different parts of Anglesey. We can do them just at the bottom of the drive on the Menai Strait, but we can do them all around Anglesey as well. And that is the longest established programme that we've got here for breeding. The wonderful thing about it, of course, all our water comes from the sea. It's all natural seawater that goes in and back out again. So these lobsters are in a very, very natural environment. The seawater is a flow-through environment for them, natural conditions. Obviously they get a little bit of, you know, the sort of changes in temperature and the plankton and things like that in the water as well, which definitely promotes their breeding behaviour. And here at Anglesey Sea Zoo, we're the only remaining hatchery that is a non-commercial hatchery now in the whole of the UK. So there were quite a few hatcheries set up with the funding in the late 1980s when this one was set up. This is the Lobster Hatchery of Wales, it always has been. And the other 2 or 3 remaining hatcheries now are purely for commercial value for farming lobsters. They do have a little bit of a behind-the-scenes sort of research tour aspect to them, but mostly they're for commercial reasons now. And this obviously is just a very, very important part now of our sustainability, our environmental work and our conservation work going forward, educating people all about fisheries, all about sustainable fisheries, and all about the importance of thinking about what you're eating and where it's come from, and why it's important to make sure that you let things survive for long enough to reproduce, to make sure that they have those really, really sustainable populations.